Hey, friends, we are so excited to welcome you back to the podcast, The Kingdom Minded Mompreneur. Today, Monique and I are going to have a really good conversation about how badly do you want it? How badly do you want your goal? How badly do you want that dream car? How badly do you want that promotion? How badly do you want to get in shape, right? This is going to be a really good conversation. And I think maybe even a wake up call for some of you guys, because, this is the season for change in our lives. And we want to see it for you, but you have to be hungry for it. So Monique, what do you think? What are some of your first thoughts when you hear that question? How badly do you want it?
Well, I just think we have become a society that has accepted excuses. And I think it's so easy for us to justify, life is busy or this happened or that happened. Or I feel like there's always a season that you can give an excuse. Like right now, we just started back to school. So it's like, oh, it's back to school time. Everything is busy and crazy. Or when it's summertime or the holidays, right? There's always a reason that we could use why we do not go all in on the very things that we want out of life. But at the end of the day, you really have to look at what do you want and are you hungry enough to go after the very thing that you want?
Yeah, I know. I heard a quote once and I couldn't tell you. I probably could Google it real quick, but I couldn't tell you who said it. But it's that quote, if you've ever been hungry, you'll never be full. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but kind of if you compare it to success or kind of if you hear some of the stories behind these incredible, successful men and women that you admire, it's like some of them came from, really crazy backgrounds or have this really inspirational story. And it just goes to show, like I guess we could use Oprah Winfrey, right, as an example, and how, she was hungry to be like this first Black female to like break down so many barriers, right? And like she did that. Like she has done that and so much more and become such an influential person. But when you hear, some of her story and kind of what happened, in her life and the things she had to endure, it's like, when you've gone through something hard, it changes your thinking because you recognize, like, I don't want to be in that place again. I don't want to go back there. And so I think sometimes when we get comfortable, it's easier to make those excuses. And it's easier to forget those things that were so hard and so challenging and that we, maybe had to get out of. Or maybe, like, for example, some people haven't maybe had to endure anything insanely hard yet in their life, um, or it's just like I said, maybe they've come out of it and they feel comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, like when you start your business, if you come in and your mindset is, hey, if this works, great. Like I could use an extra, $200 a month, $500 a month. And you give yourself the outlet of, hey, if it doesn't work, like no big deal. Like there's not really that drive in you in the same way that if somebody else came into the business and they knew, like, if I do not work this, I'm not going to be able to feed my children. That is a totally different level of showing up and doing the things that you need to do in your business. And sometimes you have to dig deep and find those reasons because it changes. A lot of
Mhm.
times people come into this business for one thing and maybe they achieve the thing that they came in for. And then you have to dig deep and find that why again and figure out what it is. But I think just this overall conversation that we're wanting to have of why are you making excuses and why are you not just doing the very things that you say you want in your life? Because this could apply to so many areas. Like how many times have we said like, okay, I want to get healthy in this area or I want to do this thing or I want to, stop scrolling social media so much, like whatever it is, right? But we just continue to feel comfortable in our patterns and we don't really hold ourselves accountable to the level of the person who we want to become.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think we have to have our desire for change and, whatever it is, but mostly the desire for change to get out of the circumstance that you're in currently has to be greater than the place you're at. It has to be greater than the discomfort that you're experiencing, because sometimes it's like, oh, well, I think so many people in in the US, in business, in life, in the whole country, it's like they become accustomed to the discomfort. And so it's almost easier to stay stuck, to stay in debt, to stay, overweight, to stay at that level of, in your business. It's like it's easier to stay there is what it seems like, right? But it's almost like, no, it's not. It's hard either way, because then you have challenges of how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to afford to help my kids, go to college or get braces, or, how am I going to pay for retirement when that time comes, and it's like all of those challenges come when you are in this space of like limited access to resources and money and, energy. And yet, if you go on the other hand, it's like, it's just as hard. It's just a different hard. You have to pick
Right.
which one you want,
Yeah. Well, and it's like when you finally get sick of how you feel, then you are willing to take that action. Like I remember I had a health transformation several years, it's probably been, I don't know, 15, 20 years now, and maybe 15 years. And I remember one day trying to put on a pair of jeans and feeling uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, that's it. Like, I am taking care of my health. I'm tired of feeling uncomfortable. I'm tired of feeling like everything physically is harder than it needs to be. And for me, that was the catalyst of, all right, I'm exercising. I'm paying attention to what I'm putting in my body. Like, I'm tired of being comfortable one way. And so I think when you come to that place, and I think of the story of the man who was lying at the pool, and the pool had, these, if you guys don't know the story, it's in the Bible story of the man who was lying by the pool that had these healing powers. And once a year, the pool was stirred, people could come and be healed. And so apparently for several years, I think it was 38 years, he kept trying to go and be healed. And he would never get there in time. And so finally, Jesus comes to him and he asks him a question, and he says, do you want to get well? And before he even asked him the question, the man had excuses. He was like, hey, every time I try, like somebody gets in front of me, I'm never able to, go to the water and get healed. And Jesus doesn't like say, oh, that's unfortunate. That is too bad for you. Like, I wish you could have gotten there quicker. Like, he doesn't say that. His question to him is, do you want to get well? And so I think it poses this question to us, when we are making excuses, it's not that we, want to tell everybody all of our reasons and want to be justified in everything, but it's really a heart issue and a heart question of, how badly do you want this?
Yeah. Well, and like anytime I've worked with specifically women, but coached someone in the industry, I would always ask the question, almost like not sarcastically, but kind of like, hey, I'm just curious, is this still a priority for you? Right. And just asking them, is this something that you still want? And because I always kind of followed up if they're like, well, yes, of course, I really want to, pay off that credit card, or yes, I really want to promote so I can do blank or earn the incentive trip. And I always follow up with, yeah, I think that's awesome. But, your actions don't align with the result that you want. And so from what I can tell, it's not a priority, right? It's not a priority. And so, would you like more accountability? Would you like, some suggestions on how to change that, to bridge the gap from it's just lip service, right? Saying it's a priority, but then actually, proving and taking action to get you closer. Because when you want something bad enough, it's like you are willing to do almost anything,
Yeah.
it's not even a matter of not like, we're not talking about sacrificing your integrity or doing something unethical, but we're just saying you're willing to commit. You're willing to get up early. You're willing to stay up late. You're willing to, do what is necessary to reach that goal. But you have to be hungry enough. You have to have that big why, something that is literally driving you forward.
Yes. And you don't have to be concerned with every little detail of the how. You just need to take action to get it done. Like I had read somewhere, because I was in the corporate space for several years, and I had read somewhere that it was titled like the best email your boss wants to receive. And the answer was the word done. Like if your boss asks you to do something, like the best email he wants back from you is done. Like I did it. Like if he emails you, hey, can you take care of these things? Or by Friday, can you do this? Or here's some things I need or whatever. He doesn't care what you have going on or when you're taking your lunch break or when you're doing this or the other. He just wants to know, did you complete the very thing that I asked you to do? And that also makes me think of, the story of the talents in the Bible where God gives them these different talents. And, one person he gives, I don't remember exactly, don't misquote me here, like, one talent, 10 talents,
Right.
whatever, 50 talents. I don't remember the exact increments, but he gives these talents. And, one person says, I went out and did this with it. And then another person's like, I went out and invested it. And then another person's like, I went out and buried it. And he gets angry at the person who buried it because he says, you wasted the very thing that I gave you to do. And the person who went out and who multiplied, like invested what they had and multiplied it, he told him, well done. And so I think that's just a reminder of it's also what we are called to steward. Like if you're given something and you're going to sit here and complain, oh, I can't pay my bills. I can't do this. I can't do that. And God's like, okay, I literally gave you a business. I literally gave you a strategy. I literally gave you social media as your platform to build your business and to do all these things. And you are wasting what he's given you to do. I think that also should be that drive for us to look at, like, are we stewarding the very things that God has given us?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think too, just recognizing that we have access to so much more in today's, society. Yeah, there's more challenges too, yeah, for sure. But we have access to so much information. And for me, when I have struggled in the past with like my mindset or, you know, um, taking action, or it seems like, man, like I've got this one thing on my list that keeps moving day to day, it's like eventually I'll get to it. Eventually I'll get to it. Or it's like on my vision board and I'm like, yeah, someday, right? Someday. But it's kind of like that quote, like someday's not a day of the week, and it's like I love this quote I found. It says, the difference between a successful person and others is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, but rather in a lack of will. And that's Vince Lombardi. And I love that because, when you think about the successful people in just any industry, it's not that they are smarter, or know more, or have started out with a bigger influence, like especially in network marketing, everybody starts at the same place, right? You start in the industry. Your introduction into the industry is at zero, right? $0 in sales, zero people on your team. And the difference is, you know, the people that, even no matter how quickly you had success or not, doesn't matter, but it's because there's years of showing up, years of taking action, years of being willing to mess up, willing to fall, and just keep getting up because you have such a drive. You have such a vision for what you're building or what you want or your why or your dreams or whatever. And you recognize that it's not the one action, or it's not the one recruit or the one leader or the one promotion that's going to get you there, but it's really more about like who you become along the way, right? It's like you develop these habits and I mean, my entire being has changed as a result of this industry. I really believe, I mean, I was an athlete and so I was, committed to like, showing up. I saw the discipline piece, I think ingrained in me through that, a lot of it, but outside of that, right? I didn't have someone saying, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I learned very quickly, yes, I had, uplines and, corporate and all these people, but at the end of the day, like it was my business. And if I wanted a paycheck and how much my paycheck was, I dictated that, right? Like I had to show up. And the minute I recognized that I was able to take ownership of it, it wasn't about like, well, my host canceled or this recruit didn't do anything, but it was like, I get to have control over that. It was like something in me clicked because I thought, wow, if I have control over making $1,000 a month, then what's to stop me from making $10,000 a month,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's kind of like, if you're driving down the road and it has a road closed sign, like this literally was just yesterday. I went to go pull out of my neighborhood and I looked to the right. I was going to turn right and it had like a road closed. And I was like, oh, okay, the whole road is closed. So I'm not turning around and going back home and saying, oh, well, I can't go pick up my kid from wherever because like you figure out a different way. And I think that's kind of the problem is a lot of times people are like, oh, this roadblock came up. And because of that, I'm going to have to, I'm not going to be able to do this thing, or this is going to put me back, or I'm not, versus recognizing like it is normal to have roadblocks. It is normal to have struggles. It is normal to go through really hard things in your life and still make success a non-negotiable. I know one of our trainings, we talk about that, like making success a non-negotiable. And I think that's one of the characteristics of leaders is they see a certain level of success. And it's not like, if I do that, it's just a matter of when, like, when am I going to accomplish this? What is the deadline? How am I going to get this done? Instead of, making it negotiable, they make it non-negotiable.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
go
Well,
ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it reminds me of the Sharp 5 roadblocks, right? In our training inside the vault, Multiply 2.0. It's like, when you almost prepare yourself for those, when those problems arise, that's what I love about that training is kind of shifting your mindset instead of trying to pretend like, everything's going to be so great, like lifetime, like this laptop lifestyle and like, just use social media and you're going to make a bajillion dollars, right? Like, but instead saying, hey, you know what? These areas of your life, it's like, I love that part of that training. It's like, hey, these are some very specific key areas in your life where things are going to happen. Hard things are going to happen and maybe already are. But if we almost anticipate it, not meaning like we're walking around like, glass half empty, right? But just it's like we have this subconscious knowing that, I mean, literally it's in scripture that like you are going to toil and struggle and strife and all this stuff because, because of sin entering the world. And so recognizing like, hey, that's going to be a part of it. And because I know that's coming, I need to anticipate like, how will I respond? What will I do? Give me the strategy, right? Like I know you can speak to that because that's a training that you did, but just knowing like it's going to happen. And so having this almost game plan in place and saying, you know what? I want this so badly that here's how I'm going to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I really am struggling with this. Like, I am struggling with the belief that I can follow through on the very things that you want in your life. And if you feel like you get stuck when you have roadblocks and things come up, I really want to encourage you to check out our Multiply 2.0 course. It's inside of the Vault. If y'all have not heard us talk about the Vault, it is our resource that has every single thing that you could think of when it comes to network marketing training. But inside of our course, Multiply 2.0, there's 12 modules that teach you specifically how to duplicate yourself, how to recruit. But also within that, the module that Becky's talking about is we teach you about what we call the Sharp 5 roadblocks, which are the most common things that come up for people that keep them stuck in their business. And then we teach you how to overcome that. So if that is a struggle of yours, we have that course. We also have a mindset makeover course that helps you know exactly how to really change your mindset. Instead of being one that you make excuses, you start taking action on your life. So those are two great resources that we have inside of the vault.
Yeah. So I want to encourage you today. If you take nothing else away from this conversation, I want to encourage you to take some time and just answer the question, how badly do I want it? Like, what is it that you are chasing? Because in a sense, you need to be chasing something. I tried that whole like, oh, don't chase the shiny carrot thing. And no, we're not saying that, but there's got to be a reason. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is it that you want to see happen out of life? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want to have happen and transpired as a result of your success, right? Of you showing up and doing the hard day after day. What do you want your kids to be able to do, and have a leg up because their mom or dad, but specifically their mom, specifically you, right? Like, what do you want them to say about you? And say, I was able to do blank because my mom, pushed past. She showed up. She worked hard. She stayed up late. She got up early. She, worked when I was napping and I was a baby and, or on her lunch break every single day instead of sitting with the coworkers, she was working on her business. And so I just want to encourage you, take some time to reflect on that, especially because we're, a little over halfway through the year. And a lot of people create vision boards and New Year's resolutions and all of that at the beginning of the year. And maybe it's time to revisit that. Maybe it's time to say, look at that vision board, look at those goals and, things that you wrote out that you were just determined to accomplish this year. It is not too late. You still have time, but you have to ask yourself, how badly do I want it?
Thanks so much for listening to the Kingdom Minded Mompreneur. If you loved what you heard today, could you stop and give us a 5-star rating and review? It helps our visibility on podcasting platforms so others like you can hear more of this message.
Also, if this episode encouraged you, we would love for you to pass it along to your own biz bestie and anyone else who could benefit. Bye for now.